Hey everyone, welcome to the Stride to Freedom podcast. My name is Russell Benaroya, and I'm the co-founder of Stride Services, a virtual back-office bookkeeping and accounting firm serving hundreds of clients around the United States. This podcast is designed to help small business owners focus on growth and innovation. In other words, focus on those things that inspired you to start your business in the first place. We call it your Genius Zone. We do our job on this podcast when business owners feel like they have the trust and confidence to build the right team of partners around them that will help them grow. Thanks for joining. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Stride to Freedom podcast, where we help business owners get and stay in their genius zone. And what is your genius zone? Well, it's what you do that feels effortless to you, where you feel the most capable, where people wonder how you do what you do. It is freedom, where you feel the most free. My name is Russell Benaroya. I'm your host of the Stride to Freedom podcast. And the Stride to Freedom podcast is brought to you by Stride Services, an outsourced back office bookkeeping and consulting firm that provides services to professional service companies and their business owners to help them get and stay in their genius zone. Our genius zone at Stride Services is to help business owners use data to make better business decisions. I am super excited today to be talking with a fellow Seattleite and friend, Mikaela Kiner. Hi, Mikaela.
Hey, Russell. Great to have you. I love this whole notion of the genius zone. I'm into it.
Oh, we're all over Genius Zone. We're always trying to find ways to spend more time in it, which is the greatest challenge we face. But you're going to help us. You're going to help us get there, and I'll tell everybody why. Mikaela is the founder of Reverb, which is a human resources consultancy, but it's so much more than that. As I'm going to let Mikaela to share with you. She is also the author of a really incredible book called Female Firebrands. It's an inspiring book, but it's also a realistic take on women's experiences in navigating the workplace. And I wanted Mikaela on the show today for two reasons. One is because this whole area of people operations and HR consultancy is really, really important for business owners that are trying to figure out how to spend time focusing on growth, but know that they have an organization of individuals that they want to help thrive. But I also want to talk about how do we collectively create an environment for women to thrive in the workplace. And that's a very timely topic. And it's an evergreen topic. We could have been talking about this 10 years ago. We're talking about it now. And the circumstance that we're talking about it now is certainly as good as any. So let's jump in. One thing I'm curious about, because you are so talented and so varied in your accomplishments, Mikaela, what are you passionate about? What drives you, and where are you in your genius zone?
Well, first of all, that's very kind, and thanks again for having me.
Pleasure.
Gosh, I'm passionate about a number of things, and I feel like, between the business and the book, I've had some great opportunities to meld those together, which has been really fun and exciting. So I am super passionate about creating great workplaces. That probably goes without saying. But, to be more specific, I think some of the challenges that we've seen for decades in the workplace and that are coming to light even more with COVID and the remote work situation, toxicity in the workplace, a lack of flexibility in the workplace, and sometimes just a lack of humanity. I don't know a better way to say it. Just treating people like cogs and not letting them be human, whether that's at work or how they fit work into the rest of their life and family, et cetera. So I'm extremely passionate about just making great places to work that are fun and kind and free of politics and bureaucracy. That's my goal. And I just listed off a bunch of our Reverb values over there. I snuck those in. I am also, as a professional woman, a woman who worked in large companies and mostly male-dominated industry, coming out of doing HR for technology, I am really passionate about inclusion and in particular gender inclusion in the workplace. And, just building those better, healthier, more inclusive workplaces that are great for everyone, and giving professional women of all ages and generations the tools that we need when we sometimes encounter those things that aren't as professional in the workplace, or come up against the challenges, right, of, why didn't I get the raise or compensation that I deserved? Or why didn't I get the promotion that I was anticipating? Or why did I get interrupted and talked over in a meeting? And just helping give women some of the tools that they need to navigate.
This question I'm going to ask you is not meant to be a lightning rod question. And I want to make a distinction between circumstances of women thriving in the workplace and then the holistic approach that you shared around, hey, I want to create a healthy workplace where everybody thrives and it lacks toxicity and politics and bureaucracy. One of the thoughts that I'm having is that when there's a particular situation around toxicity or bureaucracy or politics, that you end up at that place because all parties, whether consciously or unconsciously, are committed to that result. Now, there's obviously a power imbalance, right? Like there is, but I'm curious, and nothing like diving right in here, right? Sorry.
Let's go for it.
Okay,
go for the
awesome.
jugular.
Yeah, go for the jugular. But I'm curious, we spend a lot of time helping business leaders, and that's where you spend a lot of time, in guiding them on how to create this workplace. What is the guidance that you have when coaching leaders in the organization that might not be in senior management, in the roles that they have to play in not contributing to the toxicity, the politics, and the bureaucracy? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Big loaded question for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I will start from a place, most people they get up and come to work to do their job, right? They're not trying to create a difficult or unpleasant situation, but most people, right? Maybe some people are, very small percentage, but most people are not trying to do anything bad. So
for sure,
and then all these bad things end up happening, however. And, I think some of that is unconscious bias, right? Which most of us have learned a lot about recently and didn't really hear or talk too much about in prior years. So, I might just come to work and things work really well for me because that workplace was designed for me, right? The person in the majority. And so I might not even recognize, I'll use a totally different example. Like if you're tall, you're not going to recognize, hey, this shelf is up kind of high. Like there's a whole bunch of people who can't reach the shelf. Right. And that's just, I think it's human nature. Until you start, being made aware and kind of increasing your intelligence around that. The other things are the systems that are at play at work. That again, there are things that are they're so entrenched, they're so systemic that it's not that any one individual came in and said, "Hey, I'm going to pay women less," but it's historically, women have been paid less. And then historically, the way we've determined wages is to say, well, Mikaela, what was your last salary or what do you expect, right? And my number is going to be lower and therefore I'm going to get paid less, right? These are self-perpetuating systems. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like a lot of the recent work that's been done is making people aware of bias, getting us all to take another look at these systems, understanding things like, if I'm a woman and I come to interview at your company and I interview exclusively with a group of men, maybe one, I'm not going to feel comfortable or welcome, or I'm not going to see someone like me, therefore I may not choose to join the organization. That group of interviewers might also, miss out on something about me, right? Because there's just a different experience that they have in the workplace and in the world. And so I think these are a lot of the kind of changes that are being addressed and talked about today. Sometimes, we get a leader who knows, where they're like, I know that I have a blind spot, or I want to work on inclusion, or, hey, I've been told I was really emotionally intelligent, but now I've recognized that, that's been with a group of my all white male peers. And maybe when I'm talking to a different set of people, I don't seem emotionally intelligent at all. So how can I get better at that? Those things happen too. But I think the majority of folks fall into that earlier category of everyone's just kind of marching along, doing their job and not thinking about all of this stuff until more recently.
You started Reverb in 2015, right?
Correct.
Okay. What did you see? And maybe this is a great segue. What did you see that was missing in the marketplace that you felt like an organization like Reverb could fill and address?
Yeah. It's really fun to go back there. I think there was what I saw and there was also what I wanted to do. And I was just really fortunate that the two came together. So I saw a need for these really flexible HR services for startups, and not just HR, but as you talked about, we do some other things. So I started with both HR and leadership development, everything from first-time frontline manager training up to kind of executive retreat and mission, vision, values alignment and things like that. So those services are out there, right? It's not like I'm the first person who brought those services to the Seattle market. Yeah. But to me, the flexibility was really key. And part of why I say it worked so well for me was because after my long experience in corporate organizations, I really was passionate about doing what leaders need when they need it. And I tell this story all the time, but I had an experience in my last 6 months of work where it was succession planning time at that company. And, when it's that time, that's what you do in HR, and that's what your leaders have to do. It's a big priority. And I just remember sitting down with a leader, and he had so much going on in his business, and he had these vacant roles at a senior level and, global expansion he was working on. And I was like, okay, hey, Steve, it's, succession time and we have to fill out the thing, right? We have to have this conversation and fill out the template. He was like, I got all this stuff. I was like, yeah, but the CEO really needs the succession plan and we have limited time together. And so we had to do this exercise it's not an unimportant exercise. There were just things that would have better served him and I at that point in time, and we just couldn't get to them. And I think he and I both found that really frustrating and really painful. And I see the pain on your face. So I wanted to do what people need when they need it. And, I think that's the beauty of consulting, and in particular consulting with startups, is they don't even have that annual cycle yet, right? I mean, it might be benefits open enrollment or something, but they're like, hey, we need a performance process, or we're lacking feedback. Can you help us learn to give and receive feedback better? And the answer is yes, and we can come in and we can help you do that right now, right? You don't have to wait until you have all this other stuff out of the way.
You use the term people operations, which I think is pretty cool. Is that an industry term, or is that something that you've coined?
Yeah, I do not get to take credit for people operations, but It's really interesting. The term of human resources has quite a bad rap.
It does.
And
yes,
it really does. There were two articles that you can look up. These are ingrained in my head. 2005 and 2015, there was Why We Hate HR. And 10 years later, there was Why We Still Hate HR. They were like Inc. or Fast Company or something. But I knew that. I was aware of those articles. And I was actually at an event where it was one of these brainstorming events. I could pose a question to a group of people from different industries. And the question I posed was, what do you think of when you think of this term human resources? Literally around the table, they were like the dungeon, the dentist's office, the torture chamber. And the firm used to be called Uniquely HR. And so before we got around the table, because I had this idea that I might need to change the name, and I was like, that's it, I got to change the name. So we changed the firm name. But at the same time, this evolution was happening in the industry. And I think it really started in tech, that in some cases, HR was either replaced or augmented with the term of people ops. And the augmentation was really what I think about of all the good parts of HR, the people centricity, right? The, taking care of people, developing people, creating a great employee experience and engagement. And so some companies still have HR that's doing the more like traditional sort of tasky admin, the bureaucratic parts of the function, but then they have people ops that's doing the people focused stuff. We call it all people operations, but I hope that what the connotation is it's this better, more modern, more caring, and more innovative form of HR is really how I think of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could talk about the stages with which a client finds themselves coming to you. And so if we liken a client to an athlete, so sometimes an athlete is injured and they need PT and they've just got to get better. And then sometimes they are getting a little bit better and want to start getting a routine going again. And then sometimes they're feeling strong and they're like, okay, I'm ready to go to the next level of my athletic ability. In that customer journey, Mikaela, where do you typically find people are calling you to start the relationship, and then how do you navigate with them through their journey? Oh, can you hear me? Oh, did I
froze
lose
for
you?
I got your question, but I just froze for 1 second there.
I was like, I was actually really respecting your pregnant pause.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I actually love that analogy quite a bit. And I would say different clients come at different phases of that journey. Some clients come really early. I don't know how you think of like the young athlete who's like, hey, I think, I want to go get some coaching and learn a skill, right? So we have worked with teams as early as 2 founders, often 2 founders who have done this before, and will come and say, hey, we recognize the importance of things like values, of things like having a feedback process, right? And so we want to get ahead of that. But often people come when there's, I will call it pent-up demand. So they start to recognize there's kind of a list of things, maybe some creaky joints, right? Oh, we're hiring a lot, but we need onboarding. And maybe we've had some mishires. So we want to make sure that we're really conducting a good interview process. Also anticipating growth. I think of these thresholds, like we're growing from 15 to 25 or 25 to 50. And we know we don't have the infrastructure. Some stuff's going to break, or there's stuff that we just don't have time to get in place ourselves. And so we'll come in and do that. The phase you mentioned of that, like, hey, I'm strong and I want to get even better, or I want to maintain. I think that's where people come in for things like leadership development and executive coaching. So I've got those fundamentals. I've got I think of it as good hygiene, right? I'm hiring, I'm, developing, I'm onboarding, I'm compliant, but gosh, we're growing a team of managers, or we have some new executives or senior leaders. We want to make sure that they're firing on all cylinders. And as a team, we're firing on all cylinders. So that's where the leadership development and coaching can come in. And, if you think of us as kind of stage appropriate, you'd say, we're early, we want to get that HR stuff in place. Gosh, we're growing. Now we have some managers. We want to make sure they know how to manage well. We're going to do that. And then, okay, we're evolving even further, right? We have some individuals who have skills they want to tweak or new skills they want to build out. Maybe that's a case where we want to do some one-on-one or team coaching. And then it's all cyclical, right? Because then you get bigger and those HR needs grow, or you kind of need the next layer.
That area of people operations that feels very strategic for me, and developing individuals and developing culture, I get a lot of energy from that. There's another piece of your business, I assume, that is like compliance. And there are just things that you have to do because we work in a state and in a country that just has a lot of rules and regulations. We got to stay on top of it. Do you also provide that as a bit of a non-negotiable must do if you want to be in the game?
Yeah, exactly. We created something that I personally love, and it's our HR review. Some people might think of it as an audit, but we call it From Culture to Compliance, because when we get in, when we first meet you, we don't want to sit here and be like, oh, you need to create this great, compensation and incentives and hire the best. But over here, you're out of compliance, or you're doing something that's risky or, illegal without even knowing it, right? So we don't want you to have those kinds of gaps. And we would feel like we were doing a client a disservice if we didn't sort of poke around and just help you and, make sure that stuff is in place. I think something we notice about clients, a lot of times it is the compliance that brings them to us, because that's, people know, right? You're a lawyer, someone's going to tell you like, hey, there's paperwork. Hey, you got to file some I-9s. You need to, keep track of your employees versus your contractors, like make sure you get some HR help with that. And so a lot of people, that is the side of HR that they know. And they're not as familiar as the stuff that you and I both love, right? The strategic, the talent development, et cetera. So, I mean, we love to open people's eyes to that as well. Like, yeah, we'll come in and we'll help make sure you're compliant, but we also want to plant those seeds. Are you thinking about how you're going to grow people? Are you thinking about, not being in the 69% of managers who never got training as a manager and therefore don't know how to manage people, right? So whichever side we get called in for, we always want to take a peek and kind of plant seeds on the other side as well.
And it's so interesting, because for so many businesses, your workforce is your number one cost of sale that leaves the building pre-COVID, right? Leaves the building every single day. They are your machinery. They are your major producers. And to leave them to chance is such a disservice to building something that can transcend you as the business owner, something that is much bigger than you. We find this, by the way, in the bookkeeping, accounting, which is a lack of understanding how effective your labor is against the jobs that you're working on. Like, wouldn't you like to know, is this a profitable job or not? And are we overworking our team or underworking them? Like, without data, you can't make any decisions, or you're guessing.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lot of guessing that happens.
Yeah. I think that's really true. And, when clients do things like an engagement survey or a culture survey, or, people have been doing listening circles and things like that, a lot of information comes from those, right? And on one hand, I think a common client response is sort of like, well, why weren't people telling us these things, right? But on the other hand, well, why ask for feedback if you thought you had all of the information? But no, you're right. It's all data at the end of the day. And yeah, the more data and information that we can have about our people and what makes them effective and what helps them be productive and happy and challenged at work, the better off we'll be for sure, especially in the midst of this new, mass exodus of 40% of people wanting to quit and have a different / better lifestyle, right? I think we need to really be on guard for that.
Which has me thinking about a pro tip you might give us, or get us under the hood in your experience. Why do people leave their employer? And I know I'm asking for a very general response, but I have an inkling that is not what most people think. I'm curious what your experience has been.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Hopefully everyone is listening and thinking, why have you left your past employers, right?
Sure.
I think there are a set of really common challenges. One is certainly overwork. I would say, 2 companies where I spent a lot of time, I was pretty happy. I just felt like I was about 25% overworked. And I thought of it in those terms at that time. Like, man, if I just could have a little more time to myself, this will be fine, and I'd probably still be there. People leave their managers, right? That's a classic. And that's true. Your experience and connection point is so largely tied to your manager, regardless of the rest of the company culture and what else is going on, that if you don't feel, liked, respected, supported, challenged by that person, that's really going to impact your experience. More and more, there's research too that people leave peers, right? I mean, work is largely a team sport today. So much collaboration. And if you don't enjoy your peers, if you don't feel included or heard, that can be really frustrating. Most people don't leave for compensation. They might likely get higher compensation in that next role, because changing companies is a good way, to get a big comp increase. But I would say largely that's not what drives people. It's not just, oh, I love everything about this place, but I'm looking for more money.
So now let's apply what's happening in the environment, the resignation wave, the big tsunami of change that we're undergoing right now as people are reassessing their circumstance in light of the pandemic. Is your response different? Are people assessing their circumstance differently now? And what are they wondering?
Yeah, I read an interesting article the other day, and it was one of the many about the great exodus. But there was a line I really liked, which was, people are no longer willing to accept the unacceptable. And that really encapsulated for me, I mean, these things that I had experienced and sort of railed against. One was the toxicity / rudeness, and the other being the overwork. And if you put aside, I mean, there are safety concerns with COVID, there's a lack of childcare with COVID, right? So there are some slightly different drivers, but at the end of the day, I think people are wanting and demanding, more flexibility, just flexibility that works, like we already said, for life and family. And people are tired, right? There's a lot more anxiety. There are a lot more mental health challenges currently. And so I think expecting the workplace to be kinder and more humane is just more pressing for people than it was. So I think the reasons are largely the same, even though the context feels different.
When clients hire Reverb, what can they expect from you in helping to address some of these circumstances that are having people considering whether or not the place they work is the place they want to stay? How do you help?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is a lot of the work we've been doing for the last 18 months, right?
Sure.
Whether it was safety, and then, helping people, we don't provide mental health services, but, helping people think about how to connect and engage folks. For a minute, thinking about how to return to office, now thinking about how to not return to the office again. I'd say there are a few ways that we can help that might be unique even to organizations that might have some of their own HR support. One is that there is this reality about us being an objective third-party organization that can create just the right amount of distance that people might be, feel safe opening up to us, right? Because we're not a member of that organization. And so whether that's helping with engagement survey, culture survey, even connecting one-on-one or through some small focus groups, and frankly, just talking to people about how they're doing. So I think the objectivity helps. It's also bandwidth. I mean, most companies just aren't staffed on their HR team to, for instance, connect one-on-one with every employee. And, that's something that we have been doing for some clients who asked for help during COVID, of just saying, this is really important to us. We're not resourced to do it, so we're going to bring you on to help with that connection. Another thing is, because we see so many organizations, that we have the benefit of learning from some really great leaders and heads of people and DEI experts, and seeing a lot of best practices that have worked for them in their organizations that then, we're able to adopt and share. I know at the beginning of COVID, I was also part of a coalition that was helping to support working parents, and just thinking of creative ways to support parents who were, having a 24-hour-a-day childcare job plus an 8-hour-a-day work job. And there were some things that were so innovative, right? And whether that was people with older siblings tutoring younger siblings, of other colleagues over Zoom, or companies bringing in we're going to put a magician on Zoom for an hour, and you can you park your kid in front of that if you need a breather. Recording meetings for parents who were I have drop off, or I'm sitting with my kid getting them on Zoom at this time, but I don't want to miss a meeting. So companies that started recording all meetings so that parents could stay in touch that way. So I think, we just benefit from seeing this really great array of companies at their best that we can share. And then I think also just helping to help the leadership voice and the employee voice meet. Sometimes leaders, even if they're trying really hard to have that connection, first of all, people won't tell you everything when you're the boss and you're the leader, right? Like it's just not going to happen in most organizations. And sometimes it's hard for a leader to separate their personal feelings and preferences from maybe what's going on for others in the organization or what's right for others in the organization. Leaders who might feel really strongly, hey, I moved to Whistler during this whole thing, so I think we should all be remote work from anywhere. Or leaders who feel strongly, hey, I'm in office and I need FaceTime and I don't know what people are doing if I don't see them. I think neither of those extremes have been very popular now. The hybrid model is really popular. And sometimes some kind of translation and interpretation is needed to help get everyone on the same page.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I find that it's really important to be consistent in the message of the strategy, whether that be the workplace strategy or the business strategy, but like keep saying it and just keep repeating, because everybody interprets their own way, because the way that I receive that comment from said individual is going to be a function of maybe like how my day is going, right? I may not hear the message. So that consistency is, there's nothing sexy about that. It's just consistency, consistency.
There is a saying, this is not my saying, but there's a saying that all leadership is communication, which goes to exactly what you're saying. And you're so right about repetition. People hear it differently. They're, not focused. Now there's new people in the virtual room. I thought this, we were talking to a group the other day, and there was a particular team that was really struggling with some challenges and anxiety. And we were just trying to understand, well, what do you have already? Like, do you have an employee assistance program through your own benefit broker? And they did. And they said, yeah, we, really reminded people and let them know about that at the beginning of COVID. Like, well, they probably forgot, or if they didn't need it at that time, it just went right by them. But we need to remind them, right? Like, we're seeing this anxiety, and remind them, hey, we have this service. Bet you money people were forgetting to, call that number. And something like that can be a great resource. The company already has it. It's effectively free of cost, right? We're just forgetting people to tell people that it's out there.
Let's segue into your authorship. It's one thing to be passionate about creating environments where women can thrive in the workplace and overcoming some of the institutionalized forces that have made it difficult for them to thrive. It's another thing to sit down and write a book. It's another thing to gather 13 exceptional women to contribute to said book. So you really made a commitment to this cause. Maybe talk a little bit about the impetus for sitting down and writing this, and then what has come from the experience of giving this to the world.
Yeah, thank you. I always wanted to write a book, so I have shared this. I wrote some books when I was 9 and sent them to some publishers, and I recently found the box of rejection letters, and it was always that template rejection letter, but then people would write a really nice comment to me, like, keep trying, or good job, or something. So I did always want to write a book, and this is in the book, so I won't tell the whole story, but I had an experience of giving a talk at a Ladies in Seattle Tech event where I had my aha moment about, oh, here's the book to write. And the way to make it really powerful is by sharing different women's stories, right? Different experiences from women of different backgrounds, different industries, professional settings, and et cetera. So I found the process really energizing. I wrote the book on top of the full-time job of managing the company, and also with 2 teenagers at home. So I wrote mostly on nights and weekends. Yeah. And it was really fun. Occasionally I felt tired, but it was really fun. I think there was so much adrenaline that was involved in that process. And it was just such a joy to, receive the first physical book, right? Hold the book in your hands. I think there are 2 really cool things that have happened since the book came out. It's about a year and a half now. One is just, when any individual tells me that the book has been helpful to them, or so like was helpful in any way, shape, or form, because really the goal was that if the book could help at least one person have a better life/work experience, then that was it. So I love hearing that from people. The second, and this, it's I get to meet authors now, right? Like that's how we initially met, and I've met so many women authors in particular. Because someone will say, oh, I know this woman who's writing a book, or is thinking about publishing, or is just interested in, how that process works. And so this is really a side benefit that I didn't anticipate, but I've just met so many amazing people through that process.
The timing of the book with the Me Too movement and Time's Up has been notable. And curious if that is somewhat coincidental, and how that has impacted or shaped the narrative of your communicating the underlying themes of the book, given the circumstance of our time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I started writing post the kind of Harvey Weinstein, Me Too, that part of the movement. And you said when we first started, the book was timely. I mean, sadly, it felt really timely then, and I felt a sense of urgency. And I say sadly because it's still just as timely and just as urgent, right? I hope that one day that will not be the case. But it certainly shaped the narrative. The process that I used when I interviewed the women was that I asked each of them the same set of questions. And then I really based the chapters on the themes, right? And what sort of generated interest and energy. Not surprisingly, every woman I interviewed had had one or more Me Too moments / experiences. And so that did become an entire chapter of the book. And I think it both informed, I think it informed things in that people had just become more open to sharing those experiences and realizing that they were not responsible or not to blame for those experiences. I also think it gave language to women of a younger generation, right? It became a shorthand that was an easy way to talk about a variety of situations that happen to women in a workplace setting, right? When we talk about the Me Too moment. And it's a big bucket. I mean, I want to acknowledge, right? It could be anything from an inappropriate comment to, much more extreme assault and things like that. But I think having that common language is really, really important in how we talk about things. And when we talk about both those experiences, but also what are the tools and how do you recognize it and how do you recover from it and be resilient? I think it's really helped younger generations to be, I'll just call it, ahead of women of my own generation. And that really came through in the interviews because I largely interviewed women who are, I would call mid-career professionals, which means that when we were coming up in the workplace, we didn't have this language, and many women had been brought up that this is normal, this is expected, you just laugh or look the other way, you don't complain, you don't want to be labeled as a complainer. And much more recently, they realized like that is not the way to deal with these things. We need to address these issues head on. And many described having sort of mentored and even held the hands of younger women when they came forward with similar complaints, where they were like, we are going to help you bring this forward. We're not going to keep this quiet because things need to change and people need to be held accountable. And so I thought that was really a great recognition and learning, even that I personally had from interviewing these women, were just how they were helping and guiding the women who came after them.
How do you bring female firebrands into the workplace through Reverb?
Yeah, great question. So something that's been really fun for me is doing author talks with organizations of all stages and sizes. I think my first talk before the book came out was at Microsoft, and that I've spoken at early stage startups as well and continue to do that. And I think what's fun about it, and it could be a talk for women, it can be a talk for everyone, because there's a lot in the book that also speaks to male advocates about how do you get involved, and how do you show your support, right, and connect with your women colleagues. I found that a lot of men want to do that, but didn't always know how or whether it's appropriate or what to say. So yeah, it works for a lot of different audiences. But one of the things that we've been able to do through those talks is really customize it. And there are some things that can be really fun and empowering that we do when we engage with groups. There's some that can be more of tools and skill building, like what do I do in a hot moment? And a hot moment being if you experience or witness something that is inappropriate at work. And, back to that inappropriate comment or, the woman who always gets interrupted in the meeting. I think women and men really want the skills and tools to stop those behaviors in the moment. And that's what I love to focus on, is what's something really practical that you can be ready to say. So you're not caught off guard, you're not having to think on your feet, but you can just be really confident when those instances arise. And it's just been really fun to share those tools with people and hear their experience about using them in real life.
Yeah, great tools. I imagine that creates a lot of company and team camaraderie and culture bonding when we come together with a shared language around how to address conflict. Awesome. What is something that people don't usually ask you in these types of interviews that you wish they would?
This was the hardest question. I looked at your questions, and this was the one that really stumped me.
Oh, you're outing me. It means I primed you for.
Oh, sorry.
For just kidding.
You only primed me just a little.
Just a little. No surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's interesting is because it's great to focus a lot on, what Reverb does, and I love talking about the book, but I think there are also those pieces of sort of the entrepreneur journey, right? And like, how did that happen and what was scary? And for me, maybe this is why I like to talk about it. I have 2 kids. I'm the wage earner. My, fabulous husband is an artist and a preschool teacher. He's worked part-time ever since we had the kids, who are now 16 and 19. And so it was really scary to leave a company where I had stock options and I had benefits and to go out on my own. And I still remember, this is me, like, this is how I had to kind of talk myself down to make that leap. And one was sort of all those things that we think of as security can be bought with money, right? Like, I can buy stock in companies I like. I initially had to purchase benefits out of pocket for myself and my family, but it's just dollars. I think we have to translate it and remember it's just dollars. I don't need to work for Microsoft or Amazon to have good health benefits. There are other ways to achieve that. And then I had to know that I could go 6 months without making a penny. Fortunately, that did not happen, but I had to know that I could, right? Because you want to allow time for your business to grow. You want to settle into it. You want to figure out what you're doing a little bit. And then I also had to remind myself that if for whatever reason, 12 months from now, I don't like this, or it's not working out, it's not what I thought, I have skills, and Seattle's a great job market, and I can get a job. It might not be, my dream job right off the bat, but I had to really remind myself of all of those things. And that, I think basically it comes back to security. Like, there is a safety net. And I never looked back. I never, the moment I got started, I love doing this and I love running a business, but it did take a lot of its mental preparation, right? And sort of dealing with all of those fears. And I don't know, for others, I don't know what works for them, but that was how it worked for me.
You're an entrepreneur, supporting other entrepreneurs.
Indeed.
Last question. What is your genius zone?
I was really listening when you said this, and I loved your definition. I also think of it, it's that thing that you do that, one, it doesn't feel like work a lot of the time, and two, it comes naturally to that point where sometimes you're like, I don't know, isn't this common sense? Or why do people pay me?
Shouldn't everybody know this? Right.
Yeah, because it's your thing, right? So I'm actually an introvert. I love talking to people one-on-one. And so coaching, like the actual executive coaching, but also just coaching a leader or founder on a situation that they're going through, especially if it's interpersonal, messy, conflict laden is kind of my thing, right? Because again, I do that every day versus people who might not encounter situations like that too frequently. And it can be scary. And it's also like, if it's your situation, it's scary for you, right? But it's not scary for me because I can just sit here and be objective. So, when I look at my calendar, literally anything I see that's one-on-one, it doesn't feel like work to me. That's just how I think of it. And maybe another way to put it, a colleague of mine who I had worked with in an organization, this is shortly after I went on my own, and he was like, oh, my spouse is in this, merger and acquisition thing, and it's really messy and there's tons of conflict. So I thought of you. And I was like, great. Yes. If you're the, messy conflict, interpersonal, I'm like, please think of me. I also joke that with coming out of an HR background, I don't mind listening to people vent at all. It's not something that bothers me. And sometimes I feel like I should just go on Instagram Live and do like one-on-one venting, because people do need to vent sometimes, right? Like sometimes we need to be more constructive, but sometimes we just need to vent. And I don't mind. So like, if anyone ever just wants to email or call me for some venting, I'll give you 15 minutes for free.
That's the best offer we've ever had. That's
well,
awesome.
take me up on it. I mean it. I'm sincere.
Good. Well, I have your cell phone. I'll be calling you right after this podcast. I will make sure that everybody who listens to the podcast or comes upon the blog knows how to get connected to Reverb, knows how to get a link to Female Firebrands and an opportunity to learn more about you. And Mikaela, so appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me, Russell. It's great getting to chat with you. Really appreciate it.
You said one thing that I really liked. You said work is a team sport. Work is a team sport. And if we think about work as truly being part of a team and we put it in that sports dynamic, and many of us, whether we played in a serious way or even in a recreational way growing up, we know the dynamics of what makes a good team and what it means to participate in a sport. It's a fun way to think about the environment. And so thank you for introducing that. That was really cool.
My pleasure.
All right, Mikaela, thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. And we'll see you next week on the next edition of the Stride to Freedom podcast. Take care.